In the heart of a small village named Tembo, nestled between the rolling hills and the lush green forest, lived a beautiful girl named Amina. Amina had the brightest eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest night. Everyone in the village loved her, not just for her beauty, but for her kindness and gentle spirit. She would help the elderly, play with the children, and always find a way to make people smile. But there was one person in the village who did not smile. His name was Baku, and he was known as the madman. Baku lived in a small, rundown hut on the outskirts of the village, far from everyone else. He was tall and strong, with wild hair that grew in every direction and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. The villagers whispered about him, saying he had lost his mind many years ago when a great tragedy struck his family. No one knew exactly what happened, but they all agreed that Baku was not like everyone else. Despite his strange behavior, Amina was not afraid of Baku. She would often see him wandering near the edge of the forest, talking to himself or the birds. While the other villagers avoided him, Amina felt a strange pull toward Baku, as if there was something more to him than what everyone else saw. She wondered about the sadness in his eyes and the pain he seemed to carry with him. One day, while Amina was gathering firewood in the forest, she heard a soft, mournful tune. Following the sound, she found Baku sitting by a stream, playing a flute carved from wood. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, filled with longing and sorrow. Amina stood still, captivated by the music, and for a moment, Baku seemed like a different person, not the madman everyone feared, but a soul crying out for something lost. Amina knew she should leave, but she couldn't move. The music wrapped around her like a spell, and without thinking, she stepped forward. A twig snapped under her foot, and Baku's head jerked up. His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, Amina saw something other than madness in his gaze. She saw a spark of recognition, a flicker of humanity. You shouldn't be here, Baku stammered, his voice rough and uncertain. It's not safe. But Amina didn't run. Instead, she smiled gently and said, "Your music is beautiful, Baku. Why do you play such a sad tune?" Baku blinked, as if surprised by her words. "It's all I have left," he whispered. "All that remains of what I've lost." Amina's heart ached for him. She didn't know what had happened to Baku, but she could see that he was hurting, and she wanted to help. "Would you play for me again?" she asked softly. For a long moment, Baku just stared at her, as if trying to decide if she was real or just another figment of his imagination. Then, slowly, he raised the flute to his lips and began to play again. The music was just as sad as before, but now there was a warmth in it, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Amina closed her eyes and let the melody wash over her, feeling the pain and loneliness in every note. "Why are you not afraid of me?" he asked. "Because I don't believe you're truly mad," Amina replied. "I think you're just lost, and I want to help you find your way." Baku shook his head. "There is no way back for me, Amina. I'm too far gone." Amina refused to believe that. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Baku. Maybe you just need someone to believe in you." Baku's eyes softened, and for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. But he was also terrified. What if he hurt her? What if she realized that he was beyond saving and left him like everyone else had? He couldn't bear the thought of losing the one person who saw him as more than just a madman. "Stay away from me," Amina, Baku said, his voice trembling. "I'm not good for you." But Amina was stubborn. "I'm not going anywhere, Baku. I'll be here whenever you need me." And with that, Amina turned and walked back to the village, leaving Baku alone by the stream, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. As the days turned into weeks, Amina continued to visit Baku. She brought him food and sat with him by the stream, listening to his music and talking to him about anything and everything. Slowly, Baku began to open up to her, sharing pieces of his past, though he always stopped short of telling her what had broken him. Amina didn't push. She knew that Baku would tell her when he was ready. But not everyone in the village was as understanding as Amina. Rumors began to spread about her visits to Baku, and soon the villagers started to whisper behind her back. They said she was crazy for spending time with a madman, that she was putting herself in danger, and that she should stop before it was too late. Amina ignored the gossip, but it wasn't long before her parents found out. They were furious and forbade her from seeing Baku again. "He's not right in the head," Amina, her father, said sternly. "You're playing with fire." But Amina was determined. She knew Baku wasn't dangerous, and she couldn't turn her back on him now. She continued to see him in secret, slipping away to the forest whenever she could. The more time they spent together, the closer they became, and soon Amina realized that she was falling in love with Baku. But how could she love a man who was broken, who might never be whole again? And what would happen if the village found out? Amina's heart was torn between her love for Baku and her loyalty to her family and the village. She knew she was walking a dangerous path, but she couldn't turn back now. And so, Amina and Baku's story continued, filled with love, sorrow, and the ever-present shadow of the village's disapproval. The closer they grew, the more Amina felt that Baku was hiding something from her, something dark and painful. She could only hope that, in time, he would trust her enough to share his deepest secrets. But time was running out, and Amina knew that their fragile happiness could shatter at any moment. Amina's heart raced every time she slipped away to see Baku. The whispers in the village grew louder, and she could feel the weight of their disapproval pressing down on her. But each time she saw Baku's eyes light up when she approached, all her doubts melted away. She knew she was doing the right thing, even if the entire village thought otherwise. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Amina made her way to the forest. Baku was waiting for her by the stream, his flute resting on his lap. He smiled when he saw her, a rare and beautiful smile that made her heart flutter. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come," Baku said softly. Amina sat down beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body. "I'll always come, Baku. You know that." Baku looked away, his expression troubled. "You shouldn't. The village, they'll turn against you, you'll lose everything." And gently touched his hand. "I don't care what they think. I care about you." Baku's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw the battle raging inside him. He wanted to believe her, but the scars of his past were too deep, too raw. "You don't understand, Amina. If they find out, they'll never forgive you." "Then we'll leave," Amina said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "We'll go somewhere far away where no one knows us. We can start a new life, just the two of us." Baku shook his head, fear flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying. I'm not a good man, Amina. There are things you don't know about me, things that could hurt you." Amina squeezed his hand, refusing to let go. "Then tell me. I want to know everything, Baku. No more secrets." Baku hesitated, his jaw clenched. He had spent years burying his past, trying to forget the pain and the guilt that haunted him. But he couldn't lie to Amina, not when she looked at him with such trust, such love. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice low and filled with sorrow. "It was many years ago, before I came to this village," Baku began. "I lived in a different place, a small town much like this one. I had a family, a wife, and a little daughter. They were my world, Amina. I would have done anything for them." Amina listened intently, her heart aching as she imagined Baku with his family, a life full of love and happiness. But she knew there was more to the story, something terrible that had driven him to the brink of madness. "One night there was a fire," Baku continued, his voice trembling. "I was out working in the fields when it happened. By the time I got home, it was too late. The house was in flames and I couldn't get to them. I watched as everything I loved was consumed by the fire." Tears welled up in Amina's eyes as she imagined the horror Baku must have felt, the helplessness of watching his family perish. "Oh, Baku," she whispered, her voice breaking. Baku looked away, his eyes filled with pain. "I lost everything that night. Amina, my wife, my daughter, they were all I had. After that, I wandered from place to place, trying to outrun the memories. But the guilt followed me, gnawing at my soul. I became the man you see now, a shadow of who I once was." Amina's heart broke for Baku. She could see how much he had suffered, how deeply the loss had scarred him. But she also saw the goodness in him, the kindness that still remained despite the pain. "It wasn't your fault," Baku, she said softly. "You couldn't have saved them." Baku shook his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I should have been there. I should have protected them." Amina wrapped her arms around him, holding him close as he wept. "You can't blame yourself, Baku. You've punished yourself long enough. It's time to forgive yourself and start living again." Baku clung to Amina, his heart torn between the agony of his past and the hope she offered. For so long, he had believed he didn't deserve happiness, that he was cursed to live in darkness. But Amina's love was like a beacon, guiding him out of the shadows. "I don't know if I can," Baku whispered, his voice filled with uncertainty. "You don't have to do it alone," Amina replied, her voice steady. "We'll face it together, Baku. You're not alone anymore." Baku looked into Amina's eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, but all he saw was love and determination. Slowly, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be whole again. As they sat by the stream, wrapped in each other's arms, neither of them noticed the figure watching them from the shadows. It was one of the villagers, someone who had been suspicious of Amina's secret meetings with Baku. The figure turned and hurried back to the village, eager to spread the news. The next morning, the village was buzzing with gossip. Word had spread like wildfire, and by midday, everyone knew about Amina's relationship with Baku. The elders were furious, and Amina's parents were devastated. They couldn't understand how their daughter could fall in love with a man like Baku, a man they believed was dangerous and unstable. Amina's father confronted her that evening, his face red with anger. "How could you do this, Amina? How could you betray us like this?" Amina stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. "I haven't betrayed anyone, father. I love Baku, and he's not the man you think he is. He's been through so much, and he deserves a second chance." A second chance, her father spat. He's a madman, Amina. He's dangerous. No, he's not, Amina shouted, her voice shaking with emotion. He's just hurt, and all he needs is someone to believe in him. Her father's eyes narrowed. You're choosing him over your own family? Over your own village? Amina hesitated, her heart torn in two. She loved her family, but she also loved Baku. I'm not choosing between you, father. I'm asking you to understand. But her father would not be swayed. If you continue with this madness, Amina, you will no longer be welcome in this house. The words hit Amina like a blow, and she felt tears prick her eyes. She had never imagined her own father would turn his back on her. But she couldn't abandon Baku, not when he needed her the most. I'm sorry, father, Amina whispered, her voice choked with tears. But I can't leave him. I love him. And with that, Amina turned and walked out of her family's home, her heart heavy with sorrow. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she and Baku would face it together, no matter what. As she made her way to the forest, Amina felt a mixture of fear and determination. She had lost her family and the support of the village, but she hadn't lost Baku. And as long as they had each other, she believed they could survive anything. But the challenges ahead were greater than Amina could have imagined. The village wasn't going to let her relationship with Baku go unchallenged, and soon, Amina and Baku would find themselves caught in a storm that threatened to tear them apart. Yet, amidst the brewing storm, Amina felt a spark of hope. She had chosen love over fear, and she was willing to fight for it. As she reached the stream where Baku was waiting, Amina knew that their journey was only just beginning.